Welcome back to our panel discussion, Building a DevSecOps Mindset in Government, sponsored by Red Hat here on Federal News Radio 1500 AM and federalnewsradio.com. My guests today are Shane Barney, Deputy Chief Information Security Officer at U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. William Tinston is Program Executive Officer for Information Operations at the Defense Logistics Agency. Pamela Wise-Martinez is Chief Cloud and Enterprise Data Architect at the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation. And Adam Clater is the Chief Architect in the Office of the Chief Technologist at Red Hat's North America Public Sector. I'm your moderator, Tom Temin. And let's talk about this idea of rapid delivery of software code. This goes with the whole DevOps, and we're going to get into the DevSecOps piece of this, and goes with the agile kind of thinking where you're constantly delivering code. I think Shane mentioned that there's almost continuous delivery. And starting with you, Pamela, what is the best strategy for rapid fire delivery of code and application functionality consistent with making sure that it's secure, which is in some ways the biggest issue facing everybody?
Well, I think I'd like to take just a slight twist on that and maybe a little step back. Because first of all, I think, you know, we can't jump to DevSecOps unless we have a DevOps mindset, right? So I think that's one of the reasons why I wrote a white paper for PBGC, so that we can sort of evaluate what that would mean for us. We were already in this soup, if you will, into the agile methodologies. We were growing and learning and leaning in. But what we weren't doing is looking how DevOps could really support that continuous delivery model and mindset, if you will. So I think what we're looking at is now today is moving forward towards a DevOps approach, what we call greenfield, brownfield, some people call bimodal. I mean, there's different terminologies that you can grab and look at. But at the end of the day, what we've been looking at is how can we take advantage of cloud, number one, take advantage of containerized environments, number two, take advantage of platform standardization, number three, and then I think we can really start to get into this. I think we'll be ready for a DevOps mindset, or we will be in a DevOps mindset, if you will. Now, the security components of that being the most critical components from my perspective, since I started my career over 25 years ago, maybe a little more. But I think that from the very beginning, security has to be up front, and people have been saying that for years, and so I don't want to be a broken record there. But in the code development, in the unit testing and the integration, when the customers are down at the conference room pilot kind of testing components, I think that's where security has to be baked in up front. And when you do that, and when you create a culture for doing that, I think that's where you get the mindset. It sort of goes hand in hand. You start bringing the teams together. That's something that we haven't seen. I think traditionally, your programmers are sort of off on their own doing their thing, whether they're in an agile methodology, whether that's an integrated team or not. But as you move forward, I think now today we realize the business units have to be clearly involved, as they are in an agile methodology, but they have to be even more involved, even at the security piece of it. So it's a partnership from the developers, the mindset at the business layer, the mindset of the architects and the engineers delivering the tools, the code, what have you. So I think that it's—
Let me get specific just for a second here.
Sure.
Because you mentioned security when you listed all the teams that you want to communicate. You said security first.
Yes.
And now security may not be doing the primary coding of the application.
Absolutely.
So how do they get in there to make sure that, or when do they get in there?
Well, they have to be part of the team. I mean, I think you have to, so two things I think you have to do. Your programmers, number one, have to be trained and set up for success. They have to understand the kinds of things that the security teams are looking for. Security teams have to be tightly integrated with the programmers. They can't be sitting off on some island and then voila, the code comes over and now we say, you know, it doesn't work or it failed and we found these risks. No, it has to be part of that whole unit testing and the build process. So I think that that's the key. Bringing those two groups or those two technologists, if you will, together, programs and security architects together, working together. Now the problem with that, and I think the rest of the panel will say, you know, the security teams in a small organization like PBGC isn't huge, right? And everyone is pretty much focused on a checklist, right? So we have to get out of that checklist mindset and we have to get more into the development mindset. So we have to be sort of partners with those programmers. So I think that's the way to go.
Okay, Bill Tinston, what's your view of making sure the security is baked in when there's this new approach to?
Well, it's not checklists. Checklist management is the absence of management. So we've been talking for many years about engineering security in. And I think the DevOps, DevSecOps environment just gives us another opportunity to do that better. So we integrate them through the agile teams. We have the security test tools that are running regularly every time we build something. We get more iterations of security testing. We get them engaged in the multidisciplinary agile teams that we're running, and it gives us another opportunity to do it better. And I think we also take a good chunk of the time on the testing side out. It's no longer an after the build activity that we run through all the security scans, determine what the security team decided was wrong with it, and then go back and try and remediate them or explain to them why we did what we did and why it really doesn't need remediation. We have them engaged in the team up front, and like I said, you get them engaged through the automated DevOps tool chain and in running the security tests, and then down the line we're delivering secure code. And DevOps does that not just in security, right? The idea is it gives us better testing. We deliver better quality code across the board because you've moved that testing all the way left, and you just deliver better code.
And security, I guess, in that testing for security also has to happen after you bring, say, two previously approved blocks together and integrate them or compile them to make sure it's still secure, right?
Absolutely. DevOps, just like any other technique or software, is not magic. But it does give us the opportunity to deliver more business relevant capability in a reduced period of time with a higher quality delivery.
Bill mentioned quality. I think security becomes yet another component of how we evaluate quality, right? And so we look at that throughout the stack. There are certain base assumptions that the security organization can presuppose with an infrastructure. Let's say that I've got an operating system and technologies that security has said, if these are configured in this way and you begin developing on this platform, then that's a baseline that the security organization can sort of establish and allow for innovation to happen on top of it. So I think sort of Shane and I were talking during the break about this idea of developer nirvana. And in many ways it's the illusion of nirvana while presenting a set of governed faculties from which to build upon.
Yeah, and I would totally agree. There is, developer nirvana scares security people, always has. But I do think it's achievable, but I think you have to keep it within confines. And you just have to make it, give the appearance of non-confines, if that's even possible. And I think it is. There is the environment that we operate in now with the various cloud vendors and capabilities that they provide us. They do enable us to provide a very broad range of capabilities and functionality across the spectrum to allow them to pull from. So you really could create a developer nirvana that does have an inherent security. For me, though, when you talk about security of the process, security of the code, really what you have to really start thinking about is not so much having your security team in the traditional sense. Really, you need to start thinking of your security team as an automation team. Automation is your friend. It is how we function. It's how we do things. Instead of thinking of how we can initiate controls or gates or checks, we start thinking of how can we automate. And where can we automate? How can we automate code checks? How can we automate check-in, check-out? And if you start taking that down that line, you're also going to look at how am I going to automate incident response? USCIS is aggressively pursuing a very automated incident response capability where certain aspects of an incident are already pre-done for us prior to us even getting alerted to the incident. So it arrives on the doorstep of my security operations center with a lot of information already done for us, or in some cases already determined.
Code development events?
Or? At all levels. What I don't want to see anymore is an alert being an alert. I'm tired of paying people to sit at a desk and stare at a screen and go, oh, hey, look, there's an alert. I don't want that anymore. I want that alert to do something for me. I want it to work for me. A system that doesn't work for me is not a good system.
So the alert becomes a report.
The alert becomes something that actually becomes an actionable thing. And now, and that's tricky, right? And that's where you have to start thinking of your security teams as these automation teams. They're running in there and they're automating that process. In terms of the actual pipeline development, the process that the USCIS has developed, what we've done is we've injected into that pipeline, and completely transparent, by the way, and in full view in most cases, a number of checks at different places. So you're going to have like a static, application review, where that's going to be more like code-based. It's going to be sort of like from the inside out. And then you're also going to want to have, on the flip side of that, more of a dynamic type, where you're looking from the outside in, sort of from the user experience in. So what could a user do? What could they not do? What could they break? That sort of thing. And then kind of in between and stuck in various places and in different ways is you're going to have your pen test team. And they are just going to run around and create havoc. I think the best principle the best concept that I think that we can build into our pipeline processes and all of our development processes is the notion of chaos. I think the Simian armies is probably the best example I've ever seen of it. Not only that, they're just good fun, make great t-shirts. But really this notion that chaos happens, we assume that we're going to build really solid code and we're going to put it out there and it's going to function as we anticipate. Probably not. Time and time again, we have seen that is simply not the case. But then again, we're also not really good at predicting how that's going to change or what new impacts are coming. So you basically are going to engineer chaos into your process. You're going to create chaos. You're going to bring systems down. You're going to take servers offline. You're going to drop entire regions offline. You're going to see what happens. You want to see how your code responds. You want to see how your systems respond. You want to see how your backups are actually working or not working. You want to see how your incident response teams actually respond. You can't get there without actually doing some of that initially.
And can you do all of that testing and all that, I guess you'd call it almost simulation of the real world before you deploy it?
It's actually real world. I mean, you really do that to your production level systems.
Well, you do. So you're not just talking about the development environment with all these things.
Well, you do both. Yeah, you're going to look to do both. But you're really looking to poke as many holes as you possibly can, because that's what the hackers are going to do. That's what they are investing all of their time and energy into doing, is poking holes in what you do.
And how do you bring cloud into all of this?
Well, cloud enables all that. You could not do that in a non-cloud environment, in my opinion. A static, data center approach with your traditional rack and stacks of servers, bricks and mortar, it doesn't allow for that. You can't spin up and spin down environments at will and whim. That obviously inherits a great deal of risk associated with that. With a cloud-based environment, there is a considerable amount of damage that can be done if not properly controlled. But those controls I think you can bake in. I always talk about security at the root, where you basically, at the very platform level, kind of as Adam was saying, at the very platform level, you bake in security. And it simply is inheritable of everything above that and non-changeable. So at that point, can't we also begin talking about automation of ATOs? I mean, if I've inherited my entire security base and I've got all my security controls already baked in and they can't vary outside of that environment, why can't they inherit an ATO?
Absolutely.
There's no reason I can't do that. Now, I wouldn't say we're there, not yet. We're working our way there. I think that's what pipeline, that's what DevSecOps enables. That gives us that flexibility and that capability, but it really does start with that automation piece.
Sure. Pamela?
Yes, I think what you just described feels more like rugged IT, because I think it's a different sort of view of the world as opposed to DevSecOps or DevOps, where we're really looking at everything end to end like it's a problem, and we need to, as you said, bake in the security, continuous monitoring, quality assurance. I mean, It's all that. So we're really like boots on the ground, really focused on how you're securing not just the software, the infrastructure, how you're training folks. I mean, we're really at that point, I think, with software being the predominant, sort of weakness, if you will, in our industry, that you have to take that mindset of rugged IT.
Interesting. Adam, something to add?
So I think everyone has sort of mentioned this concept of pervasive automation, that automation really becomes the key. How do I automate, whether it's by putting API layers in front of traditional hardware stacks so that I can automate deployment of all of that infrastructure, or my ability to automate my cloud providers, or even things as simple as my network and storage elements within my existing data center. Automation across all of those things. And so I think as we talk about, especially DevOps and Agile, I like to draw a parallel between DevOps and Kaizen. I really feel like DevOps is the merge of Kaizen and Agile development. So high quality production, continuous deployment, integration of the entire team into the development process, and then this absolute elimination of waste. And the way we talk about elimination of waste is automation, right? That's really the way we achieve the elimination of waste in our processes.
It's fascinating to me that we're talking about bringing all this automation into the delivery of the business capabilities and the managing the systems. It's absolutely right, but we've been doing that for the business processes for years. It just seems backwards that we're doing this in the IT space now, when all of our jobs have been delivering that kind of automation to the business processes for years.
All right, well, that's a good place to take a break, and we're going to get into more about fine-grained about automation and orchestration and containerization in the third segment. This discussion is Building a DevSecOps Mindset in Government, sponsored by Red Hat, here on federalnewsradio.com and Federal News Radio 1500 AM.